So before getting into this video, I want to make a disclaimer, and this is for YouTube. It's a pity I have to do this, but the last video I made related to this subject was flagged for some reason. I really don't know why. I never show graphic content. I wasn't saying anything that wasn't true, and importantly, the YouTube monitors or whoever it is that does this, they totally misunderstood the purpose of the video. They had thought I was pushing conspiracy theories when I was actually challenging conspiracy theories, doing the exact opposite. So, to anyone at YouTube, this is a disclaimer. I'm not pushing conspiracy theories. Um, I'm only talking about an issue that's already in the news. Um, so I hope you will see that and not sanction me unfairly like you've done before. Um, so what I want to talk about is the fact that there is calls from some in the medical field, doctors, to reintroduce lockdowns for this period. Uh, I don't know if that's going to be up to Christmas or including Christmas or what, but um, the logic for this is that there's been a growing number of cases, and there's a new Delta Plus variant of the pandemic of the virus. Now, I'm not going to question that cases have been rising. Apparently, there's been another 135 deaths. And let's be clear, every single one of these is not a number. They're a person, someone's mother, someone's father, brother, sister. Every single one is an individual life. And this is a tragedy. As an event, it is a tragedy. It's the deadliest event of any kind since that we have experienced in this country um, since the influenza of 1918. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It is the deadliest event in the United Kingdom in 100 years, and that will be the case for many countries. So, I certainly would never downplay the scale of this thing. I mean, we're talking about 140,000 dead so far. That to put that in context, that's roughly like the population of a large town, say Oldham or perhaps Middlesbrough. Um, so it's really is a poignant figure. But I do think that there's a major civil liberty issue at play here. And I think that with all due respect to the doctors who are putting pressure on the Prime Minister to reintroduce lockdown, I think they're wrong. I'm not saying that they're wrong about the science. I'm not saying that they're wrong about the medical side. Okay, I am not one of these conspiracy theorists that claim the whole thing is a hoax or anything like that. In fact, I have no respect for that way of thinking. I think it's disgraceful that NHS staff are threatened by these idiots. I've no time for them. But there is a civil liberty issue. And with all due respect to these doctors, they're only looking at the medical side. They're saying, well, cases are rising, let's bring in lockdown. They're not thinking about the civil liberty side. They're not thinking about the mental health side for that matter. And they're not thinking about the economic side. Now, the government has to think about all those things. And there's another glaring issue here. The whole point about the vaccine rollout, I'm double vaccinated. I got 2 shots of Moderna. By the way, no side effects to any conspiracy theorists who push that. I was a little bit feverish on the second dose, but that was it. And that will be the case for most people. But anyway, the whole point about the vaccine rollout was precisely so we wouldn't keep getting into the situation of lockdowns, that it would become a case of most of the country being protected. Therefore, would have a situation where we could get back to some form of normality. And the British people took that in good faith. So if we go back into lockdown, a lot of people will say, well, what was the point of it? What was the point of being vaccinated? I do not see any moral argument for continuing to quarantine healthy people. Um, I mean, I know there's a lot of angles with this. Some might say, well, you might feel healthy, but you might be carrying it. You know what? It might well be that this is going to be with us forever. It's now in our, I don't know the biological term, but it might now be in our system, like pandemics from the past, where some of that was still in the biology of society. And I'm obviously talking really layman's terms here. I don't know all the terms, but I don't think it should be a case that the health side of things is prioritized over everything else, important as that is. I mean, are we going to be in a situation where we're in this constant yo-yo situation of we're in lockdown, cases go down for a while, then we come out of lockdown and they go up, so then we have to go back into lockdown. At some point, it has to end. And I would question those, whether they're in the medical profession or otherwise, who think that we should be in this perpetual, never-ending situation. I mean, they're looking at it from a point of view of rising number of cases, and there are legitimate issues about how much the NHS can handle. I don't think during the last 2 years there has been any point the NHS has been really, really overburdened to the point where it's broken down. Um, I do think that there is a risk, though, that mental health problems have risen as a result of lockdowns. Certainly, gambling has risen, domestic violence has risen. Um, these problems are directly associated with prolonged periods of lockdown. I'm not saying they didn't exist before, but you cannot keep treating people like cattle. Um, Civil liberty and freedom are principles we have in this country that are sacred. And I don't think that a bad event, a challenging period in our history, should be used as a reason to take away those liberties in perpetually, just without any end in sight. And I'm not going to make an analogy with the Blitz because I think a pandemic is different than bombs, than aerial warfare. I think it's a different situation. But I think that the Prime Minister, frankly, should resist these calls. He should say to the doctors that he respects them, he respects their expertise, but he has to think of civil liberty as well. He has to think of the fact that the British people have been through this, what, 3 times now? Um, we cannot go through it again. Cannot keep going in the lockdown. And Johnson needs to be careful with his words. He cannot say there's no circumstances this will happen and come out with these grand statements then only for it to happen because it will hugely damage trust in his leadership and his party and by extension the government. So, or the government and by extension his party. So I'm going to round this up. I really hope YouTube doesn't get the wrong idea. I'm not promoting conspiracy theories. I'm not saying anything against vaccines. I'm not saying that the pandemic's a hoax or anything like that. I think the majority of people have played by the rules. Most people now are vaccinated. We've slowed down a little bit compared to some other countries, but it is still a majority of people. And I just don't think there is any moral or practical argument to keep a nation of 67 million people in perpetual lockdown. I mean, at some point, you're going to have a situation where cases will rise because people are gathering, even with masks, even with masks. So I don't think there is an argument at this point to say, well, cases are rising, so let's just keep people in lockdown. Because what happens then? Okay, cases might go down briefly, but when people come out of lockdown, it'll be the exact same situation. I think maybe the only way that there is no cases is if we're in lockdown for as long as Melbourne was. And the good people in Melbourne, they finally came out of lockdown yesterday. I think if they were told they were going back in, they wouldn't take it. Um, I don't support the conspiracy theories. I certainly don't support anti-vaxxers. I've no respect for that argument, but I do feel concerned and frankly a little bit frustrated that there are medical professionals who don't seem to see any problem with this. They don't seem to see any issue with just taking away civil liberty like that. Oh well, cases are up, let's just get into lockdown. I think they have to consider that side as well. Obviously, as doctors, they're going to be considering the medical side, but it's. I just don't think there's any moral argument to have this in perpetuity. Keep bringing us into lockdown every time cases rise. I mean, it's much greater in terms of mortality than seasonal flu, but we do have seasonal flu every year. That doesn't mean we go into lockdown every year. So I do think it's at the point now where we have to accept that COVID is probably going to be with us forever in some form. But the point is, I don't want to say herd immunity, but the point is, we are now at a point, most people are vaccinated. I think, frankly, we need to adapt to it. Like I say, I'm not being heartless to the people who've lost loved ones, not at all. Every single one of those is a tragedy. But I don't think that a tragedy like that justifies taking away civil liberty from a nation. Um, because otherwise, this is never going to end. I mean, if we get into a really strict lockdown, cases might go down temporarily, but then what? How long do we stay in lockdown? When we come out, they just go up again. So I think that's always going to be the situation. Let me know your thoughts. I just think that some people might say, well, let's have one final one and then that's it. But that's the problem. I don't think that will be it. I think that if we have this final lockdown or a final lockdown, cases go down, well, then they start rising again in the new year. Maybe people start socially gathering again, maybe for New Year's Eve. So, whatever way you look at this, I think there'll always be a situation where it might be in society. And I don't think that should be used as an excuse to say, oh, well, we better go back into lockdown. No, at some point, this has to end. I think the time is now. And I'm not saying that with any lack of compassion for those who've lost loved ones. But, people die from seasonal flu, people die from other causes as well. And that doesn't mean we go into lockdown. So I think the time now is to say this has gone on long enough. I mean, 2 years is a long time for this situation. We need to really now be looking at, I don't want to say life back to normal. COVID will be with us in some form. We really have to reassess our relationship with China. But back into lockdown, no, I think that's unjustified. And that's my take. Thanks for watching.